Most people fear debt. The wealthy weaponize it. You've been told borrowing is bad. That's half true. Borrowing for consumption destroys you. Borrowing for assets multiplies you. The difference between poverty and wealth is knowing which debt builds and which debt bleeds. This is how you stop being controlled by loans and start controlling them. Chapter 1. Understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. Not all debt is created equal. Some debt enslaves you. Some debt liberates you. And if you can't tell the difference, you'll spend your life working to pay interest on things that lose value. Bad debt is simple to identify. It's any loan used to buy something that depreciates. A car loan, a credit card balance for clothes, a personal loan for a vacation. These are financial suicide, dressed up as convenience. You're paying interest on assets that are worth less every single day. Here's the math that destroys most people. You borrow $30,000 at 8% interest to buy a car. Over 5 years, you pay $36,000 total, but the car is now worth $12,000. You paid $36,000 for something worth $12,000. You incinerated $24,000 of your wealth. That's not a purchase. That's self-destruction with paperwork. Bad debt makes you poorer every month. The payment leaves your account. The asset loses value. You're bleeding from both ends, and the bank collects interest on your ignorance. This is how financial institutions keep you trapped. They sell you the illusion of ownership while harvesting your future income. Good debt works differently. Good debt is borrowed money used to acquire an asset that produces income, a rental property, a business expansion, equipment that generates revenue. The asset you buy with the loan pays for the loan itself. You're using other people's money to build your wealth. Here's the critical test. Does this debt create cash flow? If you borrow money and the asset produces more income than the loan costs, that's good debt. If the income doesn't cover the debt service, that's speculation. And speculation with borrowed money is gambling with your future. Think about a rental property. You borrowed $200,000 at 5% interest. Your monthly payment is $1,000, but the property rents for $1,800 per month. After expenses, you clear $300 monthly. The tenant is paying your mortgage. You control a $200,000 asset with a fraction of your own money, and over time, they're buying the property for you while it appreciates. This is leverage used correctly. The debt is self-liquidating. The investment itself services the loan. You're not working to pay the bank. The asset is working to pay the bank, and you're capturing the spread between the cost of borrowing and the return on investment. Most people reverse this equation. They use debt for consumption and cash for investment. They finance the depreciating car and save slowly for the appreciating asset. This is backwards. You should pay cash for things that lose value and use debt strategically for things that gain value. The wealthy understand this instinctively. They don't borrow to look rich. They borrow to become rich. They use bank capital to acquire income-producing assets. Then they use the income from those assets to buy luxuries. The luxury is the reward, not the purpose of the debt. You must develop a ruthless filter. Before signing any loan document, ask one question: will this create cash flow that exceeds the debt service? If yes, consider it. If no, reject it. No exceptions, no justifications. No, but this time is different. The danger is emotional attachment. You want the new car, you want the bigger house, you want the vacation. These wants feel like needs. They're not. Needs keep you alive, wants keep you broke. When you confuse the two, debt becomes your master instead of your tool. Good debt also requires conservative projections. Don't base your decision on best-case scenarios. Base it on worst-case math. What if rent drops 20%? What if the business takes twice as long to profit? What if interest rates rise? If the numbers still work in the worst case, the investment is solid. Hope is not a financial strategy. Wishful thinking bankrupts more people than bad luck. You must be coldly analytical. Strip away emotion, look at the numbers. If the math doesn't clearly show profit after all expenses and interest, walk away, the deal is dead. Another trap, using short-term debt for long-term assets. Your payment terms must match your asset's lifespan. If you're buying equipment that lasts 10 years, finance it over a period where the equipment's income covers the debt. Mismatch creates cash flow disasters. How many things have you financed that are now worth less than you owe? Starting today, audit every debt you currently have. Categorize each one, good debt or bad debt. If it's bad debt, create an aggressive payoff plan. If it's good debt, verify that it's actually producing positive cash flow. If it's not producing income, it's not good debt. It's a mistake that needs correction. Because debt is neutral. It's a tool, like a hammer. You can build a house or smash your hand. The tool doesn't determine the outcome. How you use it does. Chapter 2. Calculate what you can actually afford before borrowing. The bank's approval amount is not what you can afford. The bank tells you the maximum they're willing to risk, not the maximum you should borrow. Most people confuse these two numbers. That confusion destroys financial futures. When a bank approves you for $500,000, they're not giving financial advice. They're stating their risk tolerance based on algorithms designed to maximize their profit. Those algorithms assume perfect conditions, steady employment, no medical emergencies, no economic downturns. Life doesn't work that way. If you borrow the maximum, you're living with zero margin for error. One job loss, one unexpected expense, one interest rate increase. Any of these breaks you, you've bet your entire financial life on nothing going wrong. That's not courage, that's recklessness. You must calculate your own number, a number based on reality, not optimism. Start with your net take-home pay, not gross income. The money that actually hits your account after taxes. That's your real starting point. Now apply the 30% rule. Never let debt obligations exceed 30% of your net monthly income. The bank might allow 50%. Ignore them. They profit from your payments. You profit from your freedom. These interests are opposed. If you take home $5,000 monthly, your maximum debt payments should be $1,100. Mortgage, car payment, student loans, everything combined. This creates breathing room. This builds a buffer against the unexpected. This is what saves you when life happens. Most people violate this immediately. They stretch to buy the bigger house. They finance the nicer car. They max out their borrowing capacity because they can technically make the payments. Then one variable changes and their entire life collapses. You must stress test every loan before accepting it. Run worst-case scenarios. What if your income drops 25%? What if your expenses increase 20%? What if interest rates rise 3 points? If you can't sustain the payment under these conditions, the loan is too large. Stress testing isn't pessimism, it's preparedness. The optimist borrows based on hope. The realist borrows based on capacity. When crisis hits, the optimist defaults. The realist adapts. Be the realist adapts. Be the realist. Consider your debt-to-income ratio carefully. Banks use gross income. You should use net income, and you should use a lower percentage. This double adjustment creates a fortress around your finances. When others are drowning in payments, you're stable. Another critical factor, liquidity. Don't use all your cash to make the down payment. You need reserves. 6 to 12 months of debt payments in liquid savings. This buffer buys time when income drops or expenses spike. Time is survival in financial crisis. Most people sacrifice liquidity for ownership. They drain their savings to buy the asset. Then the first emergency forces them into high-interest debt to survive. They've traded low-interest debt for high-interest debt. They've made their situation worse, not better. The risk tolerance question is essential. Can you survive if this investment fails completely? If the answer is no, you're not investing. You're gambling with money you can't afford to lose. And borrowed money you can't afford to lose will destroy you. True risk tolerance isn't about wanting high returns. It's about surviving losses. If the business fails, if the property sits vacant, if the market crashes, can you still service the debt? If not, you're overextended regardless of the opportunity. Default is not just financial damage, it's reputation destruction. Defaulting proves you can't be trusted. Future lenders remember, your credit score craters. You're locked out of good debt for years. You lose the ability to leverage opportunities. The cost compounds far beyond the immediate loss. This is why conservative borrowing protects your future. You're not just protecting this deal, you're protecting your ability to make future deals. Your creditworthiness is a strategic asset. Guard it ruthlessly. Solvency must be your primary directive. Growth is secondary. You can't compound wealth if you're bankrupt. Survival comes first. Always. Once survival is secured, then you optimize for growth. Never reverse this priority. How many loans have you accepted because the bank said yes, not because your math said yes? Starting today, before considering any new debt, calculate your true affordability. Take your net monthly income, multiply by 0.10, that's your maximum total debt service. Subtract your existing debt payments. What remains is your capacity for new debt. Don't borrow $1 more than that number, regardless of what the bank approves. Because the bank's approval is their bet on you, your calculation is your protection of you. These are not the same thing. Chapter 3. Never borrow to fix a cash flow problem you created by spending. Borrowing money to solve a spending problem is like drinking seawater to cure dehydration. It feels like relief. It creates more problems, yet millions do this every month. They overspend, cash runs short, they borrow to bridge the gap. The cycle begins. This is how consumer debt traps form. You spend more than you earn. Instead of cutting spending, you borrow. The loan payment increases your monthly obligations, so you have even less margin. Next month, you're short again. You borrow more. The hole deepens. Each loan makes the next loan necessary. You're not solving the problem, you're compounding it. The original issue was spending control. Borrowing doesn't fix spending, it subsidizes it. It allows the bad behavior to continue while charging interest for the privilege. Here's the brutal truth. If you can't afford something with your current income, borrowing doesn't make it affordable. It makes it more expensive. The interest ensures you pay far more than the sticker price. You're trading future freedom for present consumption. Most people justify this with emergencies. But look at their history. The emergencies happen every month. Car repair, medical bill, unexpected expense. If it happens every month, it's not unexpected. It's your life, and your budget should account for it. Real emergencies are rare. A true emergency fund handles them. Everything else is either a genuine need that your budget should cover, or a want disguised as a need. If your budget doesn't cover actual needs, you have an income problem or a spending problem. The solution isn't more debt. It's more income or less spending. Borrowing to maintain a lifestyle you haven't earned is financial fraud against your future self. You're stealing from tomorrow to fund today, and tomorrow always comes. When it arrives, you owe both the lifestyle and the interest. The bill compounds. Think about credit card debt specifically. You charge daily expenses, coffee, meals, gas, small purchases that feel harmless. But you're financing groceries at 18% interest. By the time you pay it off, that $4 coffee costs $7. You're paying a 75% premium for convenience. This is insanity. If you can't buy groceries with current income, you're living beyond your means. The solution isn't credit. The solution is aligning spending with income. Cut expenses, increase income, or both. But don't borrow to fund the gap. The spending problem must be fixed first. Before you borrow for anything, your monthly spending must be less than your monthly income. This is non-negotiable. If you're spending more than you earn, Every loan you take makes the problem worse, not better. Here's the test. If you paid off all your debt today, would you be able to live within your income tomorrow? If no, you have a spending problem, and more debt will not solve it. More debt will fund it temporarily while making it permanent. The cycle breaks only when you stop borrowing to cover overspending. You must cut spending immediately, ruthlessly, no exceptions. Live on less than you earn. Use the surplus to pay off existing debt. Only then can you consider borrowing for actual investment. Most people resist this. They've built a lifestyle that requires more than they make. Cutting feels like failure, like poverty, like going backwards. But you're already in poverty if you're borrowing to survive. The only question is whether you'll admit it and fix it, or deny it and worsen it. The fix requires sacrifice. You eat cheaper food, you cancel subscriptions, you drive the old car longer, you say no to invitations. This hurts, but temporary pain creates permanent improvement. Permanent comfort creates permanent debt. You must also build an emergency buffer. 3 to 6 months of expenses in savings. This prevents future borrowing when unexpected costs hit. Without this buffer, you'll always be one emergency away from new debt. The cycle will never break. Building the buffer while in debt seems impossible, but it's necessary. Start small, $50 monthly, $100 if possible. Let it accumulate. Don't touch it except for true emergencies. Over time, this buffer becomes your firewall against new debt. How many times have you borrowed to cover spending that you later regretted? Starting today, commit to one rule: no new debt until spending is less than income for 3 consecutive months. Track every dollar, cut mercilessly, prove you can live within your means. Only then consider borrowing for investment, because borrowing to fix overspending is financial suicide on the installment plan. Chapter 4. Use windfalls and raises to attack principle, not to upgrade lifestyle. When your income increases, you face a choice: spend it or deploy it. Most people spend it. They upgrade immediately. New income, new lifestyle. This is why raises never create wealth. The money disappears into higher expenses. Lifestyle creep is the silent killer of wealth accumulation. You make more, you spend more. Net progress, zero. You're running faster on the same treadmill. The scenery changes, but your position doesn't. You look richer, but your net worth stays flat. Here's the shift. When income rises, lifestyle stays flat. Every dollar of new income goes to debt destruction or wealth building, not to consumption, not to upgraded living, to freedom. This requires discipline most people don't have. Think about a $5,000 annual raise. That's roughly $400 monthly after taxes. The average person absorbs this into daily spending without noticing. Better restaurants, more subscriptions, small upgrades everywhere. Within weeks, the raise is invisible. They're no wealthier than before. But if you redirect that $400 monthly to debt principal, you're changing your entire trajectory. A $20,000 debt paid at minimum monthly payments might take 7 years. Add $400 monthly, and you're done in 3 years. You just bought back 4 years of your life. The same applies to windfalls, tax refunds, bonuses, gifts, inheritance. The untrained mind sees these as free money to spend. The trained mind sees ammunition for financial warfare. Every windfall is a missile strike on your debt balance. Consider a $3,000 tax refund. If you have credit card debt at 20% interest, that $3,000 applied to principal saves you $600 annually in interest. That's a guaranteed 20% return. No investment beats that. No stock, no property. Paying off high-interest debt is the best investment available. Yet most people spend the refund on a vacation or a purchase. They're choosing temporary pleasure over permanent progress. They're trading a guaranteed 20% return for zero return. This is why they stay broke. You must resist this temptation with everything in you. When the check arrives, it goes to the lender. Immediately. before you see it in your account long enough to rationalize spending it. Automate the transfer if possible. Remove the decision point. The psychological battle is real. You'll feel like you deserve to spend it. You worked hard. You sacrificed. You earned a reward. But if you're in debt, you haven't earned anything yet. You're still in the hole. The reward comes after freedom, not before. This mindset shift separates those who escape debt from those who die in it. The wealthy delay gratification. They live below their means while income rises. They build reserves. They attack liabilities. Then, once debt-free, they enjoy the upgraded lifestyle funded by investment income, not by borrowed money. Lifestyle suppression while income rises is the fastest wealth-building strategy available. It creates a widening gap between income and expenses. That gap becomes capital. Capital becomes investment. Investment becomes passive income. Passive income becomes freedom. But it only works if you suppress the lifestyle upgrade. If you let expenses rise with income, the gap never widens. You never accumulate capital. You never build wealth. You just work harder to maintain the same financial position. Here's the formula. Every time income increases, maintain current spending for 6 months. Direct 100% of the increase to debt or investment. After 6 months, allow yourself a small lifestyle increase, but never more than 30% of the raise. The remaining 70% stays deployed toward wealth building. This balanced approach prevents complete deprivation while still prioritizing freedom. You get a taste of improvement without sacrificing the majority of your progress. You're rewarding yourself without destroying momentum. The principal paydown concept is critical. When you send extra money to a loan, it must go to principal, not future payments. Many banks will apply extra payments to next month's payment instead of reducing the principal balance. This is a trap. You must explicitly instruct them. Apply to principal only. Verify it on your next statement. If they didn't apply it correctly, call immediately. Demand correction. Don't assume they'll do the right thing. They profit from you staying in debt longer. How much money have you spent from raises that could have eliminated your debt years ago? Starting today, implement the income suppression rule. When your next raise or bonus arrives, act like it doesn't exist for your lifestyle. Maintain your current standard of living. Direct every new dollar to debt principal or investment. Watch how fast your financial position transforms when new income builds wealth instead of funding new expenses. Because the wealthy don't upgrade lifestyle with every raise. They upgrade assets, and assets eventually fund the lifestyle permanently. Chapter 5. Build your emergency fund before taking any new debt. Borrowing without a buffer is financial Russian roulette. You're one emergency away from default, one unexpected expense away from missing payments, one crisis away from destroying everything you've built. The emergency fund is not optional, it's the foundation. Most people borrow first, save later. They take the loan, then they plan to build reserves from future income. But future income never materializes as expected. Life happens. The emergency fund never gets built. They're exposed, vulnerable, one shock away from collapse. The correct sequence is reversed. Build the buffer first, then borrow if needed. The emergency fund protects the debt from destroying you when life inevitably goes wrong. It's your insurance policy against default. 3 to 6 months of expenses in liquid savings, not invested, not in real estate, in cash or near cash, instantly accessible. This amount covers your mortgage, food, utilities, insurance, and minimum debt payments if your income stops completely. You can survive 6 months while you recover. Without this buffer, every emergency becomes a crisis. The car breaks down, you have no cash, you miss a loan payment. Now you're paying late fees and hurting your credit. Or worse, you take a payday loan at 400% interest to cover the gap. You're compounding the disaster. The emergency fund breaks this cycle. Car breaks down, you pay cash from the buffer. No new debt, no missed payments, no credit damage. You handle the emergency without creating a financial emergency. Then you rebuild the fund. Most people resist building this fund because it feels like wasted money. It's sitting there earning almost nothing. They'd rather invest it or pay off debt faster. But this thinking ignores risk. The emergency fund isn't about return, it's about survival. Think of it like insurance. You don't buy home insurance hoping to collect. You buy it so catastrophe doesn't destroy you. The emergency fund works the same way. It's insurance against financial catastrophe. The cost is the missed investment return. The benefit is not going bankrupt. Here's what most people don't realize. Investing borrowed money without an emergency fund is insane leverage. You've borrowed to invest, which is already risky. Now you're doing it without a safety net. One income disruption, and you're selling investments at a loss to make loan payments. You've destroyed both the investment and your credit. The emergency fund allows you to hold investments through volatility, market crashes, rental vacancies, business slowdowns. You can weather these because you're not forced to liquidate at the worst time. You have cash to survive. The investment can recover. You win long-term because you survived short-term. The sequence matters enormously. Emergency fund first, then invest, then consider good debt to accelerate. Never reverse this order. Never skip the foundation. Every loan you take without an emergency fund is a gamble that nothing will go wrong. Eventually, something always goes wrong. Building the fund feels slow, especially when you have debt. You want to throw everything at the debt, get rid of it, be free. But building both simultaneously is the disciplined approach. Allocate some surplus to emergency fund, some to debt payoff. Progress on both fronts. A suggested split: 50% of surplus to debt, 50% to emergency fund until the fund reaches 3 months of expenses, then shift to 80% debt, 20% emergency fund until the fund reaches 6 months, then 100% to debt until debt-free. This balances progress with protection. Once the emergency fund is built and debt is gone, you never eliminate the fund. You maintain it forever. It's permanent financial infrastructure. Even when you're wealthy, you keep accessible cash. The wealthy know this. They have liquidity. They're never forced to sell assets in a fire sale. The fund size should grow with your obligations. If you take on a mortgage, your fund needs to cover that payment for 6 months. If you have kids, your required fund increases. Your buffer scales with your life. As obligations grow, protection must grow. How many financial crises have you experienced that an emergency fund would have prevented? Starting today, if you don't have an emergency fund, stop taking new debt, period. Redirect every available dollar to building your buffer, even if you have to slow debt payoff temporarily. Build the foundation first, because debt without a buffer is a time bomb, and the timer is always running. Chapter 6. Understand that refinancing usually resets your freedom timeline. Refinancing looks like savings, lower monthly payment, less stress, more cash flow. The bank presents it as doing you a favor. They're not. They're resetting your prison sentence, and you're signing the paperwork willingly. Here's what they don't tell you. When you refinance a loan with 15 years remaining into a new 30-year loan, you've just added 15 years to your debt. Yes, the payment dropped, but you'll be paying for 15 additional years. The total interest you pay will be far higher. The lower payment is not savings. It's spreading your existing debt over a longer timeline. You're choosing a lighter burden now in exchange for a much heavier burden later. This is how banks keep you trapped for life. Think about it, mathematically. You're 10 years into a 30-year mortgage. You've paid enormous interest. You've barely touched the principal. Now you refinance to get a lower rate. But the new loan is 30 years. You just went from 20 years remaining to 30 years remaining. You added a decade to your sentence. The bank loves this. You were approaching the years where your payments would actually reduce principal significantly. They just reset you to the front of the amortization schedule, where payments are mostly interest again. They get another decade of profit from you. Most people don't see this. They see the $200 monthly savings. They feel relief. They don't calculate that $200 monthly for 10 extra years is $24,000 in additional payments. They saved $200 monthly, but cost themselves $24,000 total. This is financial illiteracy exploited. The refinancing costs make it worse. Closing costs, fees, appraisal charges, these run thousands of dollars. The bank often rolls them into the loan. Now you're paying interest on the fees for 30 years. That $5,000 in fees becomes $12,000 over the life of the loan. You're paying interest on interest. The break-even calculation is critical. If closing costs are $5,000 and you save $200 monthly, break-even is 25 months. If you move or sell before 25 months, you lost money on the refinance. Most people don't do this math. They accept the offer because it sounds good. Prepayment penalties add another layer of destruction. Some loans charge you for paying off early. You're penalized for escaping. If your current loan has this, refinancing triggers the penalty. That cost must be factored into the decision. It often eliminates any benefit. The cash-out refinance is the most dangerous version. You refinance for more than you owe. You take the difference in cash. People use this to buy cars, pay for weddings, fund vacations. They're securing consumer debt against their house. They're risking their shelter for temporary pleasures. This is financial insanity. You're taking a depreciating purchase and financing it with a 30-year loan secured by your home. That vacation costs you the price plus 30 years of interest. The true cost might be triple the sticker price. And if you can't pay, you lose your house. The cash out also strips equity. You're removing the ownership you built, increasing your debt, raising your risk. If property values drop, you could owe more than the house is worth. You're trapped, can't sell, can't refinance, stuck. Banks push refinancing aggressively because it's profitable. They see you approaching debt freedom. They intervene. They offer relief. You accept. You're back at the beginning. This cycle can repeat multiple times. People refinance every few years. They never escape. They die with mortgage debt. The rare valid refinance, adjustable rate about to spike. Refinance to fixed rate saves you, or significantly lower rate without extending the term. If you can go from 6% to 3% and keep the 15-year term, that's legitimate savings, but this is uncommon. Most refinancing is a trap. The bait is lower payments. The hook is extended time. Don't take it. Stay the course. Pay off the debt. Don't let them reset the clock. How many years have you added to your debt by refinancing for a lower payment? Starting today, commit to never refinancing unless you can shorten the term or keep it the same while significantly lowering the rate. If the offer extends your term, reject it. You're not interested in lower payments. You're interested in zero payments. And the only way to zero is paying off the debt, not restructuring it. Because the fastest path to freedom is finishing what you started, not restarting at mile zero every few years. Chapter 7. Transition from debt elimination to wealth building. The moment you're free, the moment you make your final debt payment, a dangerous transition begins. You've been disciplined, focused, aggressive. You've paid off everything. Now you have huge monthly cash flow and zero obligations. This is the most vulnerable moment of your financial life. Most people celebrate by upgrading their lifestyle. They've been in poverty mode for years. Now they want to enjoy the freedom. They buy the new car, move to the nicer place, take the vacation. Within months, they're back where they started. Different debt, same prison. You must resist this with everything in you. The discipline that killed your debt must immediately redirect to building wealth. The payment you were making to the bank must now go to your investment account. Same amount, same frequency, non-negotiable. This is the transition that separates temporary improvement from permanent transformation. You've eliminated the negative. Now you build the positive. You move from defense to offense, from survival to growth, from destroying liabilities to accumulating assets. The freed cash flow is your weapon. If you were paying $2,000 monthly to service debt, you now have $2,000 monthly for investment. Don't spend it. Deploy it. Direct it into index funds, rental properties, or business equity. Make that money work for you. The goal is to replace your active income with passive income. You want assets that generate cash flow without your labor. This is financial freedom, not having money, having income that doesn't require your time. Calculate your freedom number. How much monthly passive income do you need to cover your expenses? If you need $4,000 monthly and your investments generate $4,000 monthly, you're free. You work because you want to, not because you have to. Getting there requires aggressive investment. You can't tiptoe to wealth. You must attack your portfolio with the same intensity you attacked your debt. Same sacrifice, same focus, same discipline, just different target. The compound effect is your ally. Money invested grows. Growth gets reinvested. That grows. Over decades, small consistent contributions become massive portfolios, but only if you start, only if you stay consistent, only if you don't spend the progress. Most people waste the freed cash flow. They've been restricted for so long. Now they want rewards. They deserve it. They've earned it. This thinking destroys the opportunity. You haven't earned anything yet. You've gotten to zero. Zero is not wealth. Zero is the starting line. True wealth comes from owning assets. Assets that appreciate. Assets that pay dividends. Assets that generate rent. These assets buy your time back. They give you options. They create the life most people only dream about. The wealthy don't work for money. They work for meaning. They're not chained to income. Their assets produce income. This is the life you're building toward. But you'll never reach it if you spend the freed cash flow on consumption. The lifestyle upgrade comes later, much later, after the passive income is established, after the portfolio is built, after the foundation is laid. Then you can upgrade, but you upgrade from investment income, not from freed debt payments. This delayed gratification is what most people can't handle. They want the reward now, so they never build real wealth. They trade long-term freedom for short-term comfort. They choose the immediate pleasure over the permanent transformation. How much freed cash flow have you wasted on lifestyle upgrades instead of investments? Starting today, commit to the transition rule. When debt is gone, the payment continues, but now it goes to your investment account. Same amount, same day, for the rest of your life. This is how you stop being controlled by money and start controlling it. This is how debt elimination becomes wealth building. This is how temporary freedom becomes permanent. Outro. That is how debt becomes your tool instead of your master. Not by avoiding it completely, by deploying it strategically. Borrow for assets that produce income, never for consumption that produces regret. Your freedom depends on knowing the difference. Now use that knowledge